my loud voice. All right, so we want to thank everyone for coming out again this morning, for taking part in the documentary. Hopefully that went well, that discussion went well. It was good there. Also thank folks who came out or who stayed here for the Legalizing Black Education activity. Again, if you want that sent to you, we can send you everything, the handouts, the quotes, everything if you want to use that in your classroom. If you want to use that with your community group or your student group, we have that for you. At this point, we want to have our student panel discussion where we ask our young folks what they are thinking, where their minds are in regards to these very important issues. When we talk about book banning, when we talk about banning the teaching of true history, of real history. So we want to start with a quote. Jason Stanley recently published a book called Erasing History, and I just want to read this small quote, short quote. Erasing history paves the way for ethnic, racial, and religious nationalism. When you censor the history of social movements, you make citizens feel like they have no agency, and so it's an anti-democratic education. And so what we want to do is today is put this in the hands of our young folks. And so from the left, Nazay?
Yes.
Nazay Richardson, so make sure I get it correct, right? Nazay Richardson is an alumnus of the Sankofa Leadership Academy up in Patterson, and so we want to welcome you for coming. We also have Jared, who is from the Sankofa Leadership Academy. Jared is a recent graduate of Rosa Parks High School in Patterson and will be attending Montclair State University in the fall. We have next is Fatima Ahmed, one of our comrades from Milburn High School. Fatima will be a senior next year, right? And will also be the president of the BSU, the Black Student Union at Milburn High School. Fatima is like a 3-year veteran of our Saturday school. And so for those of you who don't know, every year we do like a 6 to 8 week program. And she's been coming from Milburn, right, for 3 years straight. So welcome. And then we have Will Yard, all right? Will is a graduating senior here at Columbia High School. I am fortunate enough not to have him in one class, but 2 classes. So he's in my Literature of the African Diaspora class, and he's also in AP African American Studies. And so again, Will, we welcome you. Have you made college decisions?
Yes.
College decision yet?
Oh, yeah. NYU.
All right, Will's going to be going to NYU in the fall. Yep. And then L. Guillaume, yes. So Elle is a rising senior here at Columbia High School. She also is a member of the Max Scholars here at Columbia High School, as is Will. Elle, I know, is applying to the University of Pennsylvania for next year, and we have, because one of the, I had mentioned earlier the Model Gary Student Convention that we hold annually. The person who started or who founded, who created the Model Gary Student Convention is Dr. Kelly Harris. He is one of the directors of the Africana Studies Department at the University of Pennsylvania, a personal friend of Teaching for Black Lives and Maps for Freedom School. And so we are almost certain that with Elle's great grades and terrific scores, that she will have a home at the University of Pennsylvania next fall. And last but not least, our youth are bringing up the rear, all right? And so Nyla is a middle school student at North Brunswick Middle School, North Brunswick Township Middle School. Nyla has come to every session of Saturday school this year, and so we look forward to her becoming a veteran as well. And so these are our panelists, folks. So each of the panelists will have about 2 minutes, right, to answer their question, right? And then we're going to try and keep it flowing. I'm going to try and be as specific as I can in terms of who's going to answer what, just so we can get all the questions answered. All right, folks? Alrighty, so we're going to start off with Elle, Nazay, and Jared. If you could answer this question, why is teaching the full truth about U.S. history, including histories of oppression and resistance, essential to our democracy? And in any order, either Elle, Nazay, or Jared.
I could start. I don't mind. Sure. Okay. So, it's not. Can you hear me? Oh.
So do lights with the moon.
Mic check.
Hello. Hello. I mean.
So the blue light is on.
It's on now.
It's on.
Is it? Is that my phone? I can just project for now, and then we'll get the microphone working. So I think, teaching the full history has definitely been controversial always in American history, but I think it's essential to protect our democracy, so that's basically my answer to the question. But I think if you think back through any example, if students were always kept in the dark, no social movements would have ever worked. If civil rights activists didn't know and didn't affirm the sovereignty and the autonomy of Black individuals, the civil rights movement would have never worked, and it wouldn't have been as successful as it was. So learning the full education and the full truth of different situations empowers people and gives them the power to change society, as shown by the civil rights movement. Okay, it's working. Yeah, that's kind of all I want to say on that, but I just think it's extremely important to teach each perspective because it empowers our students to think and to challenge the patriarchy, the system that keeps Black people down, keeps all minorities down, and I think it's extremely, extremely important to teach those perspectives in order to empower our students.
I think something she really said that was important. I think something she said.
I'm sorry,
Hello?
I think something she said that was really important was empowerment. And I think there's a lot of work to be done. We've also done a lot of work. But what's also beautiful about is that the next generation that's coming up behind us, because eventually all of us are going to graduate and go into our selective fields that we chose to go back and help our communities and do. But that's the goal. And then there's classes behind us to help do the work that's not finished. So I think what's important, learning the truth gives you new empowerment to figure out what's the next thing in my community that I need to fix? What's the next thing in my community that I can start improving on and making changes on? And what do I not like? And how do I fix the issues? How do I find a group of people that we can come together and fix what we're mad about or upset about? So I think knowing the truth gives us this power that we don't even know that we have sometimes, and a voice that no one can shut down.
I'm gonna piggyback off of their two previous answers. Just knowing the truth is only the beginning, and to be able to, make a change, you have to know the truth, regardless of how it paints another group in another light or how, gritty and hard the truth might be. That's what, implements the beginning of change and beginning of, making things better for the future.
Thanks. I want to ask Will and Nyla and Fatima, if you could answer this question. What does teaching truth mean to you personally, right? Whether, as a student, right? From your perspective as a student, what does teaching truth mean to you?
To me, teaching truth is context regardless of comfortability level. I think it's having a full view and putting things in a picture that can be seen from any angle, and you could still gather the same story, I think, or you'll get to the same conclusion. I think it's really important now more than ever that when we're looking at things back in history to try to get agency back from the things in the past, having a choice and seeing that, there was nonviolent resistance, but there was also violent resistance. There were slaves who rebelled by just breaking their tools. There's slaves who killed their masters. Like the kind of rainbow of resistance, or the rainbow of kind of in specifically ways like Black agency has been taught. I think we are very they're very boxed in. Like there's this one way they like to teach how we fought back, this kind of passive, very digestible, the digestible black radical, which doesn't make any sense. That doesn't fit into the mainframe. Like being radical is the opposite of being digestible. So I think summarizing everything up, absolutely. Like.
I really agree with what Will said. I think that it's important that when we're learning about topics that may be uncomfortable in schools, that we really show a full perspective, especially as being a Black student. When you are in a classroom that doesn't really reflect your ideologies or who you are as a person, and you don't see people who look like you in your classroom, you feel that when you speak out on certain issues that pertain to you and your identity, that it's wrong or that it's loud, right? Being a Black woman would mean that when you see something that is wrong, you can't really explain why that feels wrong, because then no one else will be able to hear you. If you raise your voice in a certain way, no one's going to listen. And it feels like talking to a brick wall. So teaching truth really just means that we are seeing a perspective that hasn't been talked about before, in a way that is nuanced, in a way that is reflective of how we treat each other in the classroom, how we treat the world when we graduate, and it means that we're able to question and critically think, like how Elle had explained earlier.
I think that teaching truth in the classroom is not sugarcoating the lesson, making sure everything is heard and understood. And for me, I just feel like our classrooms need to teach more truth as it is, so that we can really know what happened, and so that like in the future we can, now we can change, and so the future will be better.
Thank you, Nyla, for that response. I think it leads to our next question. I'm going to ask Nazay, Nyla, and Jared, right, to follow up on this. Can you share a moment in school when you experienced or witnessed the erasure of history, right, or some sort of censorship?
In social studies, when we were learning about enslavement, she described it as just being kidnapped, but what I was taught from my aunt Sean, I was taught that they were taken against their will, that there were people that tried to fight back, but I wasn't taught that in school. She was sugarcoating the lesson. She didn't explain what they had to go through on the boat, what it felt like to leave their families. She just said, just imagine being kidnapped and see how you would feel. But it was way more than that.
So for me, it's been since kindergarten when they start off with Christopher Columbus. You know, they paint him as this hero, who discovered America, and it's this like innocent little child's book story. But then the truth is, he raped and murdered a whole village full of people, not a village, a whole race full of people. And they do the same with the Jim Crow era, and the truth about slavery. Even like with FICO scores and tuition with college, they don't tell you the truth on those types of topics on why is it so hard for you to receive an education in America, because they make it hard for us. So it's all in the curriculum. They hide and sugarcoat little things and don't tell the truth.
I definitely agree with Nazay. Like that whole Columbus thing, I was believing it for so long. I was like, yeah, that's exactly what happened. Like, that's the bomb, not crime. Like, that's the truth. Until you really take the time, and I started meeting mentors, and they're like, no, sir, that's not what happened. Let me give you some background so you understand who you really are. And once you understand who you really are, you can see the myths and the truths, and then you can challenge them. And it gives you the power they can see the basketball in your court, because now you can be like, oh, the Amistad Act says you guys start teaching me about these things, and that's wrong. Or you're not putting everything you're supposed to put into the curriculum or my education, so I feel played. So yeah, definitely taking the time to understand who you are, what your history is like, and where you come from.
Really appreciated his responses. So Nyla, for example, Nazay talked about, this happening straight up out of the, box. So kindergarten, right, and first grade. Christopher Columbus, they're lying to us, right? Nyla's talking about, listen, my teacher in middle school is lying to me about enslavement. And so from kindergarten all the way up through high school, right? Jared's graduating on his way to college, and right, the erasure, right, of history, the censorship, the lessons not being taught. The next question, Will, L, and Fatima. How has learning or not learning the full truth about U.S. history shaped your sense of self or your sense of belonging?
I can go first. I think specifically growing up in like a predominantly white community like Maplewood, South Orange, the kind of relationship I had with my own race was always like through a filter, kind of, because obviously I'm like, I come from this predominantly white community that is apparently really diverse, but at the same time you can kind of see the separations and just like the lunchroom and the classroom and in grades and like kind of all these different little aspects. And for me, it was kind of that fight for me to give myself the grace to be human. Kind of like, there was this always like comparing myself with other kids and trying to see like, or like just phonetic and genetic things. Like there was such a long time I had difficulty like accepting the texture of my hair just because I saw, like, I valued whiteness in the way, I put that as the standard, and then everything else was a deviation from it. Not that the default human was like a male, a white, a cisgender, straight. Like there is a default, and then we're all variations of that default. And nobody told me that. That was just from kindergarten, the Christopher Columbus stories. That's what I just put A to B to C together. So that's like, kind of like, and then you get a little insecure. Those insecurities can, like, it takes a long time to deconstruct all those insecurities. And teaching truth and slowly peeling back like the layers of how much of your identity can be explained by like these outside sources trying to project stuff onto you. I think unlearning that and unstripping that is like not only like what keeps us alive, but like keeps us happy.
Yeah, Will summed it up really well, but for me it was really unique because I would definitely say that I was raised like colorblind in a colorful world. My parents really did their best to make sure that I never felt the burden of like racism from a young age. And so I definitely had kind of no idea. I mean, I knew I was Black, but I didn't think like twice about it. I was just like, this is how I am. Like, this is my family and this is my life, and like I wouldn't trade it for the world. And so for me, I had that really like, I knew race was a thing, but to me, I didn't think it was this huge denominator that it is in the real world. And so when I first went to school and we started learning about the oppression of certain groups, I was really confused, definitely, which is a little bit, I guess, on my parents' part, because they wanted to make sure that I never felt like the oppression of being Black. So they did their best to coddle me, and I do appreciate that. But then it was definitely confusing when you go to school and then you hear these stories of that. I feel empowered, and my father is a lawyer and my mom is a very high up executive. So how are you saying that the entire history of my people is picking cotton and being kidnapped from Africa? Like, this doesn't fit the life that I feel I'm living. And so it was definitely a disconnect there. And then I think also it's really important to see yourself represented in your curriculum in a positive light, which is like the Huey Newton quote over there. He says how he didn't feel connected to school because he wasn't represented in his school. And so I feel like for me, only seeing myself as, seeing people like myself as servile and as enslaved was really not, I didn't feel connected to that because
A victim to be saved.
Yeah, exactly. I don't feel like a victim. I think I'm very empowered. I think if you ask any of my teachers, they would tell you that. And so for me, it was definitely weird only hearing one narrative, one kind of perspective of Black people. And so I think it's so important for teachers and for students to learn more about each like side. So like you were saying, like it wasn't just being enslaved and letting that happen to you, there was resistance, and resistance came in all different forms, and it's really important in affirming who you are and affirming like the power and the autonomy that comes with being Black.
With the way
That's it.
that the Black identity was introduced to me in school, it was always that being African or being African American was synonymous. There was never really any distinction of like, oh, this is what an African American is, this is what an African is. And me personally, I am African, but I never felt connected to that identity because of being raised in a white school. I never really got the chance to look at myself and see, oh, I'm different from these people, but how or why? What makes me different? And I think that learning that type of classification or learning why those identities are nuanced or what really defines you as a person was important to knowing who I was and knowing not really my place in society, but really knowing my history and my culture. And I think that in school, we have to make a better, sorry, I'm losing my track. We have to make an effort to really talk about what these identities are, what being Caribbean means, what being African American means, what being African means, and how those distinctions were important once, but they shouldn't be as important to saying your worth in society now.
If possible, we would like to have all of the panelists answer this question. Can you identify and just briefly describe a chilling effect that you may have observed in education or in your school regarding curriculum restrictions?
For me, this is really visceral, this question. I would definitely say the most noticeable effect in my school that I see is definitely colorism. Our curriculum has done a very good job of instilling a hatred for Blackness in students. I think from a young age, we're kind of taught to idolize and to value these white figures, and a lot of them are admirable for their contributions to our society, but Black people are equally, and if not more so, admirable and had great contributions. So I think for me, I definitely saw a lot of times other Black students within the Black community saying harmful things towards each other, or saying colorist things, or saying, oh, making kind of division within the Black community. Our curriculum has been really effective in really deepening this divide within the Black community because of little things that don't matter. And I think definitely it's instilled a lot of self-hatred, and I know for a lot of Black students it's hard to learn these things and not see yourself represented, and only see yourself represented in negative ways and still feel positively about yourself. So I think our curriculum's done a really good job at devaluing the Black individual and the Black sense of self, which is really, really harmful.
Yeah, I wanted to talk more about how this idea that children are projected onto this idea that the further you are from Blackness and closer to whiteness, the more virtuous you are. I think there's this kind of ideal that we're that of all races, all genders, all across the board, the closer you are to this idea of the white straight maleness, the better off of a person, or the more of that idea of being the default. And I think what has been the hardest for me is to separate, to take all this history, all this information, all these acts of resistance, know that I'm standing on the shoulders of such giants, and then knowing that I need to keep, it's hard to know that you have to keep running, you have to keep the gas pumping, because as soon as you take the foot off the gas, who's in office right now? They're gonna bite back. It's really not over. How we have this idea, there's this idea of, Obama, post-racialized world. We have phones now. We don't have it, but it's kind of this again with the sugar coating. They want to make you feel, oh, give us a Beyonce. So that, oh, you have one. No. it's so sadistic. And then when you really get to see like all these parts of society that are so deeply ingrained with this, like the music industry, the education, like healthcare, all of it is like so ingrained with this stuff. Get away from whiteness, get close to black, or get away from blackness, get close to whiteness. Like you can see it, and then it's like, how do I maneuver in a country that doesn't want me as a citizen?
So the most chilling I've seen, like in the school system, so I work at Eastside High School, and so I work with high schoolers all day, and the most that I see within like the black students is they use being black as an insult with each other. So piggybacking off what they said with the colorism, I see a lot of, internalized hate and colorism within the black community, especially the young black community. And like what they said, it's ingrained in social media, it's ingrained in, shows that they watch, it's ingrained in history. And it's actually very sad and disgusting to see, especially because Eastside High School is 80%, Dominican, and they're the minority. So, you go around these other kids of other, nationalities and races, and you degrade each other, and it's an embarrassment to the community, and it's an embarrassment to yourself.
I agree with everything that everyone else said. The colorism is definitely like a huge issue. My school is a little different because I went to a fine and performing arts school, so I worked around like a lot of thespians, a lot of writers, a lot of artists, painters, actors, things of that nature. So my social studies looked a little different than a normal social studies class, but it also brought color to my eyes in the sense of how when an African American songwriter gets an award, it's like looked as kind of like small, but like when someone else of a different color gets an award, it's like the biggest thing in the world. And it's like, why does everything we do get shrunk down into something that's microscopic, and everyone else does something and it's like the greatest thing in the world, and Donald Trump loves him? I don't understand that. So I feel like being proud of what we do is important, and not losing consciousness of our achievements is also important as well.
I think that like in schools, one of the most common issues would be either colorism or microaggressions from white counterparts. It's difficult to be able to have a conversation with someone. They say something that feels aggressive, but you can't really pinpoint what it was because it's a notion that is so ingrained in their mind that they can't recognize it themselves. They say something that's a microaggression, but now you're in a position where you can't really call that out because now you look like you're nitpicking and you're trying to find any issue to just be mad at and be angry at. So it's difficult for you to be in a classroom where the history being taught is not complete and there's missing information. So then when people take that in and they internalize it, they're not able to really find what's wrong with something that might come off as a microaggression. If it's about your hair, or if it's about your intelligence, or if it's about your skin color. Like people saying that someone who is of darker skin would naturally be inferior to someone who is white is something that has been ingrained in our people. And it's not just the white people that are giving these arguments, it's black people as well. This type of strive to be lighter or not being in the sun or trying to come
closer to whiteness.
Closer to whiteness, right. Because why is blackness demonized? We're not bad people for being dark, right? And that doesn't mean anything about our intelligence either. How come when a black person speaks well and they're speaking eloquently, now they're too white?
Right.
Why are you speaking white?
Intelligence is only for white people.
Right, because we can't be smart. That doesn't make any sense. And then that encourages people to really stick into those stereotypes, really believing that they're not capable of going to these lengths that they see white students going to. How come I can't go to an Ivy League, right? I'm not smart enough to do that. But we should be able to have these aspirations and be able to have these dreams because we too are able to strive and be competent and be smart.
Period.
I being said and nothing's being done about it. And it's just like they said, like it's being put into the mindset of kids my age and like kids in general that it's okay to say things like that, and it's really not. And like the missing parts of history, like that they don't teach us in schools, honestly probably a big part of that too, because nobody's learning why it isn't okay. Like you can tell a kid that it's not okay and they'll just be like okay and move on with their day, but they'll still come to school tomorrow saying the same thing that they said that hurt your feelings. And honestly, I don't get why I can be told like I'm smart and somebody told me I'm gonna need that someday, but a girl that's white can be as smart as me and they're not told that. Like, why do I have to need that someday and she doesn't? Like, why do I have to be told that? And it's really hard to like know that I'm gonna have to grow up and be like looked at differently than somebody else. So yeah, I definitely think that that's a problem. And you know, just the stereotypes, they get worse every day. Like, what about like the chicken thing? Like, I thought chicken was a food that everybody ate, so why is one race being like said stuff like that, being said to that race? Or like a drink, Kool-Aid, that's so stupid, but at the same time, you made a drink racist. That's really crazy to me.
Y'all are crazy. Y'all make everything jail.
Don't forget about the watermelon now.
Exactly. You made a fruit racist. How do you do that? People are just getting really out of control.
Y'all creative.
Really creative. And then again with my hair, like I don't want to look at somebody and be like, oh, I want her curly hair or I want her straight hair, because I love my hair. And it's just like, oh, if my hair is too nappy, oh, why does her hair look like that? But my natural fro isn't good enough. But if you look at her, she's wearing her hair, it's just straight, it's out. I'm wearing my hair out and it's a problem. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I just wanted to quickly kind of touch on like what you just brought up with the kind of like, oh, like she can wear her hair out, but I can't. It's kind of like the same thing going along with everything. They want our rhythm, but they don't want our blues. Like every single aspect of us is so cool and so novel, but us. It's like, that is like living in that's the other part about living in a predominantly white community, is that you really, y'all dap each other up. Y'all say pull up. Y'all say y'all. None of that is you. Like I can, and then you can see the parts that they're taking and they're considering cool, but at the same time, so it's kind of like you have to live in this kind of like of being an American, being in a country that doesn't want you as a citizen. It's like, how can I be cool and not cool at the same time? How is it awesome, all the joy and all the community, the shared way we maneuver around the world? Like how can I value that so much while also seeing how difficult this has made me? Like, it's like, how can those things live together at the same time?
Let's go left to right here. And this question, I'm just going to give you a couple of examples. What do we lose, right, when schools avoid difficult or controversial topics? For example, right, Nyla had mentioned earlier about like teaching about slavery. A lot of folks know or may not know about what's taking place on the African continent right now, right, in the Sahel region. Palestine, right, an issue or a topic that students and teachers, right, are often, like shamed, right, or threatened, if you will. So when schools don't discuss these controversial topics, what do we lose as students? What do we lose as teachers? What do we lose as a community?
I believe when we don't touch on topics that are controversial or may ruffle a couple feathers, it creates, I want to say, chaos within the school, because within, students are interested in these topics, and these are very vital because they're up with current events. They're going to want to ask questions on, the things that are happening in our country and, outside of our country. If you don't talk about these topics, they're going to talk about it regardless of whatever you want to say. They're going to talk about those topics regardless, and putting those thoughts in their heads, implement I believe it, starting those difficult conversations leads to solutions and resolutions, I believe, or different alternatives about situations.
So I think that not talking about the difficult conversations builds a disconnect between the students, the alumni, and the teachers. Because I don't know about you guys, like my neighborhood, none of the teachers that we have grow up where you're from. And it used to be like that. Like when I talk to my mentors, they used to live down the street from their teachers, so they understood the struggle. Like they see you playing out late at night and they're like, oh, why you not at home doing your homework? So we lost that because all our teachers work in Patterson but live in Elmore Park. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but you'll never be able to connect with being black and living in Patterson. And then it's also a disconnect because African American people should not have to learn about being African from watching Black Panther. You know what I'm saying? Like, it shouldn't be like that. And unfortunately, we don't have, in certain schools, we don't have the time and the people, we don't have the people in the right places to teach the students the right things because they don't see it as something that is appropriate or something that they need because it doesn't affect their family. They don't see the direct examples of why it's important. And it takes students in this panel and students like you guys to step up and write an email because youth voices are powerful. No one can buy you because you can't vote yet. So your voice is so powerful because a good youth can move a room. A good youth can move a council board. A good youth can move anyone because your voice has power.
It also creates barriers. Like Will was saying before, we have to teach history regardless of comfortability, regardless if you're comfortable learning or listening or watching certain things that may feel atrocious, may feel kind of wrong or almost illegal to be seeing, because it just sounds so absurd that it's happening. In one of my history classes, we've been talking about Reconstruction, we've been talking about Jim Crow, and then the topic of lynching came up, and we started watching videos about that. My teacher singled me out specifically, and she was like, hey, if you are uncomfortable seeing this, like, it's okay to look away. But I think that it's important to watch and truly engage in these types of conversations. And even if a student may voice that they feel almost guilt that these things happened and perhaps they're white and they feel like, oh, I don't want to learn about this because I feel guilty, like it's my ancestors' fault that this happened. But we have to push through that because even if honestly, I don't want to say get over it, but we should push through that and still engage with these types of conversations because when you find students that may have political opinions that they want to voice or they're passionate about certain current events that are happening now in areas that are not respected, they're ostracized. They're seen as maybe too woke, or maybe they are a little bit too engaged, right? Maybe they're asking too many questions, maybe they're too curious. But we should be able to foster those types of people that want to learn, because if they're not going to learn it in school, they're going to find some other place to learn it, and they're going to find other people that they're able to talk to it. Like this type of meeting where we're able to connect with one another because we all have the same type of aspiration where we want to be engaged.
Yeah, I think the main thing we lose out on is our humanity, opportunities to be vulnerable, and I think we lose a lot of joy by leaving out history and doing this kind of patchworky, because like what you were talking about with like Black Panther, it just brought me back to like, oh my God, there's so much of our energy and time is spent trying to make things better. Like imagine if we could just spend some time creating like happiness, black inventions. That was the first Black joy. Like going and seeing Black Panther in the movies was like the first time I've gone to like, it felt like a cultural event. It felt like people were going back. It felt like it was heavy. I was like, oh my God, like, come on, like everyone's doing this for like a whole year. Like it took the world by storm, but that just goes to show that like blackness to black people is so, it's so beautiful, but so dangerous at the same time. Like, it's so, like, I'm just talking about like how hard it is to live with these kinds of like, oh my God, I love being black, but oh my God, it kind of sucks being black. Like, at the same time, it's so hard to live with that. And you lose out on your humanity and potential connections with other people by censoring yourself and drawing back and going into your shell and turning off the language and prescribing yourself to being too woke, like this idea that you could be too in the know or too radical, right? That just means you're not digestible. That means you're doing the right thing. So I think that, period.
So for me, I think, of course, not educating your children is the worst thing you could do for them. But on top of that, I think also they lose so much, like you said, humanity and human connection. So for me personally, I learned about the Holocaust through the first hand perspective of my Opa, who grew up in Germany and left as the Nazis were rising to power. And so for me, that gave me so much perspective, and I was really able to learn about the Holocaust and learn about the rise of fascism in Germany in a really intricate way. And through that, I was able to connect the struggles that I learned about of political dissenters in Germany and the struggles of the Jewish population in Germany. And I was really able to form this beautiful connection with Ms. Aberami, who's sitting over there on her phone. And I feel like because of that, I've really been able to understand and bridge these connections. So for me, seeing the oppression of the Haitian people and the genocide of the Haitian people and the struggling of the Haitian people during the earthquake as a Haitian individual, and then having this other perspective of my white side and how they their oppression, what they carry with them, and I was able to take those different cultures and connect with somebody else on her on her struggles as a Palestinian. And so I feel like it, on top of not only losing your education, you also lose the chance to connect with people, because obviously we're not all the same, we all have different things, but the struggles of me as whoever I am and Ms. Aberami are very similar, and we're able to connect over that. So I feel like you also lose the opportunity to connect with people and learn about their struggles and also understand a different perspective. So, yeah.
I think that you lose trust in what you think the world is. I think you lose perspective of the world when you don't get taught these events. Because it's how are you going to tell? How am I supposed to know I'm safe if I don't even know what's going on in the rest of the world? And then back to what you said about being too woke. What is too woke? What is that? I don't know what being too woke is, because it's if I'm not woke enough, then I'm called dumb and I'm not safe. But then if I'm too woke, I'm called all these other things, and I just don't get that.
Don't be too
I don't
black,
get a
don't
lot
be too
of
white,
things.
don't be too girly, don't be too guy. There's no winning. There's never any
There's
winning.
never any winning. But yeah, I just think I lose the trust. I think I lose knowledge of what the world is, and I just lose a lot of opportunities, like you said, to connect with people. I can't connect with others or have sympathy or empathy for others if I don't know what's going on, if I'm not taught that. And I can't know, I can know right from wrong, but I won't really know right from wrong if I'm not taught what is going on. That's why I think that we have a lot of racial stereotypes, because everybody's not taught right from wrong.
Right. So folks, we are up against the clock. The pizza and the wings are here, so folks are hungry. So last question, we're gonna break it up. I want Nazay, Nyla, and Jared to answer this question first, and then we'll close out with Will, Elle, and Fatima. Nazay, Nyla, and Jared, what does resistance to curriculum censorship look like to you in a classroom or community?
Can you give an example?
What does resistance, to curriculum censorship, shutting down curriculum, banning Black history, resisting that, what does it look like to you in the classroom?
How they're resisting, taking books away, from the classroom, me resisting is me finding a book in a public library or somewhere else where I can read and really learn the truth. basically working against that. Honestly, I think that when I'm working with my aunt, that I'm resisting and I'm learning the truth. And being at Saturday school, like I really think that that's resisting and basically really knowing what went on in history and basically taking off the censor on like the burden of what's going on.
So I think figuring out unlocking who you are is the first part of resisting. Because when you find out who you are, unfortunately, no one's gonna walk up to us in our schools and tell us who you are and where you came from. It just doesn't work like that, and it's unfortunate because if there was someone that took the time and sat me down in my school and was like, you come from greatness, you come from this place, that's just so that you're just wilding out right now. It's not the truth. Then I could have said that to someone else, and then we could have started our own group. It could have been a group. It could have been something better than what it was. So I think unlocking who you are is really important. It's the first thing you have to do because everything, I think, it's almost like a grooming process. It's like when you're teaching a dog how to act, you teach it in stages. So, he does something good, give him a treat, and then you teach the next step, and then you teach the next step. It's almost like that. Like in my city, it's like slow actions to a big agenda that's not seen in a spectacle until you get there. So like in my school, they started with like taking certain books away, and then they were trying to attack the Patterson Library. They were trying to take the funding away from the Patterson Library, shut down the library. And then they were trying to make it difficult for students to get library cards, and then they were trying to make it difficult for students to get to the library. So all these small steps to get to a bigger scene, to make it harder for people to get to where they want to be and understand knowledge. So I think unlocking where you are, unlocking who you are, and doing research on your own if you can.
YouTube.
And then, YouTube, Google, TikTok. Like, there's so many options that we can now use that are just on our cell phone.
What I mostly see in school buildings right now, they don't put much effort into, when there is Black History Month, implementing those Black history curriculums, teaching the kids about, Black historical figures and such as that. I feel like they don't put much of, initiative when it comes to programs like that, or even having after school programs that are focused on those types of topics. They take funding from those types of programs. They don't put money into the education of the young Black kids. And especially in Paterson, New Jersey, it's all mostly geared towards Hispanic kids. So when it comes to, Black topics and being in Black spaces, they don't put much initiatives into it. So that's what I mostly see in my community, but also having programs like St. Paul for Leadership Academy, Buzz and Emoja, things like that are vital for the African American kids because they are the minority in Paterson, New Jersey, but also they don't see too many of each other. And then when they do see each other, it's mostly, slurs and, saying disrespectful things about each other, colorist remarks. So I do feel like, there is a bit of a pullback. They don't let the kids use the library in Eastside. And then when they do, they make it an issue. They don't, advocate for the books, reading the books, teaching the kids about Malcolm X, Madam C.J. Walker, historical Black people who actually made a change for Black people and weren't, it's not all about oppression all the time.
Having a strong sense of self, Garrett mentioned unlocking who you are, and as he was saying that a few times, over the last 3-4 decades, I've done a lot of work with and in support of Black political prisoners, former Black Panthers, former members of the Black Liberation Army, who've done 30, 40, 50 years in lockup, 20 or 30 years in solitary confinement. I once had one of them tell me, TJ, you can survive solitary confinement if you have a sense of self. And so when Jared talks about unlocking who you are, even some of the most violent repression, right? Some of our ancestors and our elders, right, withstood that repression by having a sense of self, like knowing who you are, right?
Being educated, having knowledge.
Yep. Last question, Will, L, and Fatima. What gives you hope in the fight for honest and inclusive education? What gives you hope?
is that, I don't know, so far the human race, we've done some bad, we've done some good. I think, whoa,
We'll get there.
I have the greatest thing I think we have is we have time right now. We have the time. I think that no matter what, like, we have the time right now. We don't know what the deadline is, but as long as we're working right now and things like this are happening and we're here and we do the work, whether it's hard or uncomfortable or makes our skin crawl, you are here, you're ready to clown, you're ready to take on the world. Like, just how we think back to Martin Luther King and like, oh my God, like they were sitting there resisting, they let them dump the milkshakes on their head, they sat through all that. Like, they are going, 100 years from now, they're gonna look back at us and see who was sitting there in the prisons, resisting, walking the streets, posting things online, keeping things in circulation. Like, the way that we view, or things have quote unquote like halted, or things have stopped, like, couldn't be further from the truth. Like, we now more than ever, keep going, keep fighting, we got this. Period.
Yeah, I fully agree with Will, and I couldn't have said it better. I think on top of that, it's the human spirit. I think also the incredible strength of the Black community.
Look how far we've come.
Yeah.
Hello?
If we can go from being kidnapped and enslaved and resisting that oppression, and then going from that and now holding power, like we have a Black
Beyonce, like,
we
come
have
on!
Beyonce, we have 2 Black Supreme Court justices. Yeah, we have plenty of Black senators, plenty of Black congressmen, and so we can see now like these accomplishments that we've had over time, and slowly but surely. And so I think the strength of the Black community really gives me hope, and then seeing other young people who are really passionate. I feel like sometimes for me, like this is what I wanted. This is my entire life. Like, I want to go into African studies. This is what I'm really passionate about. And
Makes
so
me
seeing,
feel not too woke.
yeah, and seeing other
Makes me
people who
feel
are
not too
really
woke.
passionate about like the same things as me gives me hope. And like just also having incredible mentors like Mr. Whitaker and like Ms. Agarami, who are always supporting me and always like teaching me more. That gives me hope.
I think that it's important that us as students and younger people to really be engaged in these types of discourses and these types of conversations, and to start things in your school. Start a Black Student Union, start anything that has to do with really talking about the political climate and the environment, and talk about how these things are affecting you, affecting people that you see.
Why?
Right. Ask questions. Ask why. Why does this happen, and how did this happen? How did we come to this point? And like Will and Ella were saying, like, Black people really are amazing. Like, we have done so many things, and we have accomplished, and we have endured, and we have persevered.
Yeah. In the face of all that terribleness.
Right. And I think that if we start those small little initiatives where it's maybe just like 1 meeting a week, right, or 1 meeting a month, and then we grow and we learn together. For example, with my Black Student Union, I've been in it since freshman year, and we used to be like this small little club where people used to think, well, I can't go to that club because I'm not Black, so why would I ever join, right? And then we started getting more participation from people who weren't Black, and they were allies, and the whole thing was built on allyship. It's not wrong to be an ally. If you're not directly in the issue, be an ally, because that's how you show that you care, right? And it's not only about yourself, but also about other people. And now my club has been recognized in our town, in our board of education, right? It doesn't stop in the classroom that you're taking your meeting in. It doesn't stop with the advisor, the teacher that's really just overseeing. It can grow and it can prosper. And right now we're going to be connecting with our Black association in our town, and mind you, my school is 2% Black, so I'm not really sure how
Sure.
big that
It's
is.
you and one other
Right. So I think it might be me and one other person, who knows. So we're going to be making a Juneteenth celebration, right? And we're celebrating Juneteenth, and I think that it's beautiful that we're able to have these events where it's student-led, right? Where we're connecting with adults and we're networking, but really it's the love from the students and their interests, right? We're really allowing for students to be at the center. And I think that's how it should be, because a lot of these things, yes, they've already been set by people who are older and have come before us, but it's really our chance to keep it moving, right?
Keep that foot on the gas.
It's not stagnant, and a lot of people want to be complacent and say that, well, I'm not a slave anymore, so I guess everything is great, right? And we're fine, we don't have to do anything. But that's not the case, and it's important to recognize that there's still work to be done.
Hear that.
That's it.
I don't know if you got a chance to answer the first question. I think I had missed you. Do you want to talk? I had asked for you and Jose and Jared to answer it, and I don't know. I think I might have skipped you.
It was the one before.
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much. Thank you so much. Can we give up?
Thank you for coming in.
All right, so one of the things that has come up a few times, right, is organizing, and whether we're talking about it on a teacher level, us organizing on a student level, and the thing about it is, like, organizing, right, is not protest or not just protest, right? Organizing is not just a demonstration, right? Organizing is not just like firing off an email. Like, organizing takes commitment, right? And when you understand that, the change that we're trying to create, what the students are committing themselves to, is not easy, right? It ebbs and flows, right? Because students come in, a lot of energy, they graduate, they leave, then the energy is gone, and you have to wait for another group to come in, right? And so it's not easy, right? It's not easy as teachers, right? Our jobs are on the line. We have spouses and elders and children to take care of, and so you're always taking a chance, right? But when we talk about organization means commitment, a group like the Sankofa Leadership Academy, Raheem, what are we, 10, 15, how many years?
35 years.
35 years, right? And so we're talking about like decades of building, right, leadership in Patterson. Organization meaning commitment. I'm just gonna ask Brother Raheem to come up for a few minutes and talk about the Leadership Academy.